What up, cucks? It's your boy, the hater. And as promised, we're continuing the tradition of reviewing every wrestling show that we get our hands on. Once I find out what night TNA is on, maybe I'll start reviewing that too. But for now, it's Monday night, which means it's time for a Raw review. Now, let's talk about the highlights, the good and the bad. This show was actually not horrible. There's a lot that I enjoyed here. So let's get to it. First up, Liv Morgan and Dominik Mysterio have a segment, right? This is necessary in the sense that I actually think this is the only storyline in wrestling right now. So with that being said, it's necessary, to advance this storyline. But nothing really happened, right? Everything that they said to each other had already been said. Like last week when they had the little kiss moment, that's really all you needed to know to understand what was going on here, right? There's no need to further tell me exactly what you implied on Monday night, right? Now, in order to keep the memory fresh in the heads of the fans, you gotta do some sort of follow-up, right? But just because you have to do that doesn't mean that the follow-up has to be this kind of lowbrow nonsense, predictable garbage, right? There could have been a step forward, you know what I mean? And you could argue the step forward was Finn Balor coming down and being like, what are you doing, you know what I mean? And even Dominik being like, when mommy comes back, it's really interesting how far they're pushing Rhea Ripley, to the point where she's not here and she's really the center of the storyline, right? Like the storyline isn't Dominik and Liv Morgan. The storyline here is it's just Rhea Ripley. It's not even Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan. It's just Rhea Ripley, right? So when she comes back, the logical thing to do would be to reunite her and Dom. Dom has a change of heart. And then he lets mommy win and, we go back to the China Eddie Guerrero dynamic. But who knows and who cares for now, right? I don't know when Rhea Ripley's supposed to come back. So until then, it doesn't matter. But it was good to see in this segment. Then we had a bullshit match between Ludwig Kaiser and Sheamus, right? This match should have been about half the time that it took. There was a part where Sheamus goes for the bro kick and his leg gives out, right? At this point, they should have just had Ludwig Kaiser hit his little finisher. Whatever the hell it's called. It has a name, but it's like one of the finishers of one of those OVE guys, like the Compass Rose or something. It's the Velveteen Dream move. Remember the move that Velveteen Dream would do? It wasn't really his finisher, but he would do it, and it was a good move. Like that little spinning DDT thing, right? It's like almost like a Sister Abigail DDT. After that, that should have been it. But instead, they continued to have the match for another few minutes, and basically Sheamus goes up to the top rope. Ludwig Kaiser just kicks his leg and pins him, right? So it's like, if you're going to have Ludwig Kaiser get a win over Sheamus, just have him do the finisher, so he gets a decisive win. Now, Sheamus is awesome. I really like Sheamus. I've always liked his look because he's just so pale and red-headed that he just stands out, right? He's also big and strong. And, he does cool moves, right? He's basically Gunther, except in better shape. Maybe not now because now he's a little chubby like they keep saying. But in his prime, Sheamus was like a fucking, he was almost like a John Cena, right? Even now, he's in better shape than Gunther probably. But he's this just beast of a man who does better moves than Gunther, is more charismatic, is better on the mic, is better in the ring, is better than him at everything. But for some reason, Gunther's protege has to beat him. I got nothing against Ludwig Kaiser. I like him, but this guy's never going to be anything special. I mean, you know what I'm saying? This is like Kofi Kingston without the world title written all over it. You know what I'm saying? But anyways, it is what it is. He wins. Then we had a pretty interesting match between Finn Balor and Dragon Lee. I believe Finn Balor won. I kind of dozed off a little bit, but it was a good match because it's finally Finn Balor is wrestling someone his size. In a few months, everyone's going to be Finn Balor's size. But it was a good match for what it was. During the match, Michael Cole kept saying how Rey Mysterio said Dragon Lee's the future of Lucha. I used to think so too before he got signed to WWE because he was actually pretty good in the Indies. I personally think he's one of the better luchadors. To me, it's still Rey Fenix, but it is what to me, honestly, it's still Rey Mysterio. I think he's gonna outlast these fucks too. So, anyways, next up we had the Chad Gable mandatory segment of the week. This was okay. This was just okay for me, and here's why. Right? First of all, let's get it out of the way and just point out the fact. Otis is insanely over. Right? Otis rules. I've always thought that Otis, there's something there with him, right? He's just very charismatic in this mannerisms, right? It's easy for people to get behind Otis. Everybody knows I like Tozawa, but Otis is mad over, right? Chad Gable is also mad over, but he's a heel, and he's one of the few heels that gets treated like a heel. The segment essentially is Sami Zayn is telling these jobbers, right, that like he's been where they've been, alluding to the fact that he was part of the bloodline and he was also a lackey under like a tyrant boss, right? Which brings the question, honestly, it's like, all right, with Sami Zayn and Jey Uso and Jimmy Uso and anybody else that was under Roman Reigns, it makes perfect sense because you're under Roman Reigns, who's been champion for 4 years, right? Like Roman Reigns, here's how it is. Even though this is just kayfabe, just being associated to Roman Reigns has insanely skyrocketed Jey Uso's stock. Like Jey Uso, like nobody thought that Jey Uso would ever be in the position he's in right now. So even though I don't think it's gonna last long, so that's understandable, right? It's like Jey Uso can be like, oh, I was under the oppressive thumb of Roman Reigns because I thought I'd get glory and a push basically, and now it's just me, Us, right? But like Tozawa and Otis cannot say the same thing, right? As a matter of fact, it makes no sense for Tozawa and Otis to even be going after fucking, like to be following Chad Gable, right? Because Chad Gable, I mean, I like him, but he's a jobber, right? A lot of the wrestlers today are just jobbers. And with that being said, we can't do anything more about that, right? They're just jobbers and nothing's going to change. So why would they follow Otis, right? It doesn't make any sense at all, right? I mean, sorry, follow Chad Gable. It doesn't make any sense. They're not going to get anything out of him. Like, he's never won a match, So, like, the fact that they're, like, loyal to Chad Gable doesn't make any sense. I guess it's just a loyalty, but whatever. It is what it is. The segment ends with Maxine Dupree getting hurt. So that's what that is, right? Then we've got Braun Breaker versus Ricochet. This was a perfect match. I really enjoyed this. Braun Breaker does, like, he jumps to the top rope, does a Frankensteiner, and then hits the fucking spear and pins a very game Ricochet, right? This was like a very short match, but that's all you need. You know what I'm saying? Good stuff. Kiana James beats Natalya in a match that was actually tolerable. I'm not going to lie. I almost enjoyed this, right? Natalya is way better of a wrestler than Kiana James, but Kiana James essentially wins with like the little Jimmy, whatever. She calls it the 401k, but it's like a spinning little Jimmy. Then we have Braun Strowman versus Carlito. Good to see that Braun Strowman's using that reverse chokeslam move that he used to do back in the day. He pins Carlito, no problem. Nothing really to write home about here, except for the post-match beatdown. What's his name? JD McDonough, like, pretty much leads and orchestrates a severe beatdown of Braun Strowman, which I really enjoyed. I thought it was really good. It's one of those situations where, like, Braun Strowman is pretty ripe for these kind of beatings. He's like an abyss, right? He should be taking a beating like this every once in a while. And it was good to see that it was JD McDonough, and that it was good to see that the Judgment Day doing pretty well. But beyond that, there's nothing here, right? There's no real story. The story, once again, is Liv Morgan and Dominik, and they can't do it all by themselves. Then we had a throwaway match, Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair versus Zoe Stark, who somehow is still employed, and her tag team partner, Shayna Baszler, who also somehow is still employed. Obviously, Jade and Bianca win. Nobody cares. It doesn't really make any difference. This is just a waste of time. Like this is just literally a placeholder for Jade Cargill to like learn a few wrestling moves and kind of like, get on the good side of Triple H, I guess, because everybody knows she's a star in the making. Next up, Jey Uso cuts a very, very bad promo. The fans are behind it, but the promo's not good. He stumbles his words, he misses his cues, and basically he says he's going to be the next Money in the Bank jobber, right? The Authors of Pain beat the New Day. Again, this is leading nowhere. I don't think anybody really cares if Kofi Kingston or Xavier Woods turn on the New Day. It doesn't matter, but whatever. Let's see where that goes. And then we had Damian Priest beating Rey Mysterio. Given that Rey Mysterio is in his 50s, I believe, the fact that he's still in the Raw main event speaks volumes to what a legend he is. The more Damian Priest wins, but the more interesting thing that happened in this match is actually the fact that Judgment Day prevailed over Drew McIntyre. Again, there's really no story here, right? Drew McIntyre is just basically getting a title shot because they're going to his hometown, right? Which everybody knew. Like, as soon as they announced Clash at the Castle 2 in Scotland, everyone was like, oh, okay, either Drew McIntyre is going to be the champion or he's going to, like, win the championship or at least fight for the championship. I wouldn't be surprised if he just wins the title, you know what I mean? Like, Damian Priest's title reign has been kind of lackluster. And honestly, like, it's just, like, anything that you can do with Damian Priest in his entire career is gonna fall short of the moment that you can give Drew McIntyre and the fans. So I wouldn't be surprised, but I don't care. So once again, no real story. The only story that we had here is Dominik, and once again, Dominik has to save the show from the clutches of bullshit. And that's been your Raw review. Cooks!